Growing food in a freezing climate wasn't just difficult, it was a fight for survival. One mistake could mean an empty storage room when winter hits. But medieval farmers weren't helpless. They had methods, strategies, and a few clever tricks, starting with something that made all the difference before winter even arrived. As the air turned chilly and daylight faded, villages got busy. Farmers worked fast, knowing their survival depended on what they did before the frost set in. The first task? Deep plowing. Using strong wooden plows with iron tips, pulled by oxen, they broke up the soil before it became rock hard. If they waited too long, the ground would be so frozen, they might as well try ice skating on it. This early plowing helped the soil stay loose and full of nutrients through winter. Manure was extremely valuable in medieval times. Farmers collected every dropping from their livestock and spread it across fields in thick layers. Then they'd add straw and fallen leaves on top. This mulch kept the soil warmer, sometimes 10 degrees warmer, and slowly broke down to feed the earth with nutrients. Farmers back then were the original recyclers, turning poop into gold long before anyone thought of going green. Water management was another crucial skill. Nothing killed crops faster than waterlogged soil that froze solid. Using simple wooden spades, medieval farmers dug networks of ditches. Some villages had drainage systems several miles long. These channels guided excess water away from fields, preventing the deadly freezing that would push young plants out of the ground. These drainage experts could have taught modern plumbers a thing or two about preventing frozen pipes. The timing of this preparation followed specific patterns. Many communities had special days marked for plowing based on seasons and moon phases. Some believed land prepared during a waning moon would yield better harvests, a belief some farmers still follow today. By the time the first snow fell, medieval fields looked empty but were actually full of potential, waiting for spring. The careful work done in autumn made all the difference between having food or going hungry. With the land now ready, medieval farmers faced their next challenge. Medieval farmers needed to choose plants tough enough to handle freezing weather. They couldn't just grow anything they wanted. Years of trying different crops taught them which ones could survive harsh winters. Winter grains became the most important crops in cold areas. Rye was especially valuable because it could grow in places too cold for other grains. This sturdy plant was like the medieval version of a polar bear swimmer. It actually enjoyed jumping into freezing conditions. Farmers planted rye seeds in late autumn, where they would sleep under snow all winter. As soon as temperatures rose slightly in spring, these seeds would start growing, giving farmers extra weeks of growing time. Rye was incredibly important in cold regions. Remains found in old villages show that more than 70% of grain grown in northern Europe was rye. Most people ate rye bread every single day. Tough vegetables were also essential for survival. Turnips, cabbages, and onions could handle light frost without dying. Farmers planted these in late summer so they would be almost fully grown before the first hard freeze. Cabbage was especially useful because one plant provided many meals. Cabbage was the Swiss Army knife of medieval vegetables. It could be eaten fresh, cooked, or turned into sauerkraut that lasted for months. Medieval farmers also discovered that growing certain plants together helped both types survive. Beans and peas would grow up the stalks of grains like natural ladders. At the same time, these climbing plants put nutrients back into the soil that helped the grain grow better. These plants had the perfect friendship. One offered support while the other shared food. Another clever method was planting short crops between taller ones. The big plants blocked harsh winds, creating a warmer spot for smaller, more fragile plants. Old records showed this type of mixed planting could increase how much food farmers harvested by up to 25%, often making the difference between having enough to eat or going hungry. With their cold, hardy plants in the ground, medieval farmers still faced their next struggle. It's creating warmth to protect their crops when temperatures plummeted. They developed clever methods to shield plants from freezing without any modern technology. Manure hotbeds were one of their most brilliant solutions. Fresh animal waste naturally heats up as it decomposes. Farmers dug shallow trenches, filled them with fresh manure, and added a thin layer of soil on top before planting. These medieval farmers knew their poop was valuable long before modern gardeners paid good money for bags of manure at garden centers. The decomposing waste could make the soil 15 degrees warmer than surrounding areas for several weeks. This extra warmth kept roots from freezing and allowed plants to continue growing despite the cold air. Wind protection was another key strategy. Cold winds could damage plants that might otherwise survive low temperatures. Farmers created windbreaks called wattles by weaving flexible branches into fences. These barriers blocked harsh winds while still allowing sunlight to reach the plants. Gardens sheltered by wattle fencing produced nearly 30% more food than exposed gardens in the same area. Medieval farmers also invented early versions of greenhouses. They crafted protective covers called cloches from glass or clay. These bell-shaped covers were placed over individual plants to trap heat. Medieval vegetables got tucked in at night with their very own glass blankets, much better treatment than the farmers themselves often received. During daylight hours, the sun would warm the air inside, and this warmth stayed trapped at night when temperatures dropped. For larger areas, farmers built cold frames, wooden boxes with transparent tops that protected entire rows of plants. For especially important crops, some farmers constructed slanted frames covered with oiled parchment that allowed sunlight to enter while keeping cold air out. These simple structures could extend growing seasons by up to 40 days in some places. The most successful medieval gardens used all these methods together. Wattle fences formed the outer defense, with manure hotbeds warming from below and cloches protecting from above. With their crops now shielded from the worst of winter's bite, medieval farmers looked to another source of warmth. Beyond creating artificial warmth with manure and protective covers, medieval farmers became experts at finding and using natural heat sources already present in their environment. They mastered the art of working with nature rather than fighting against it. Stone walls served as more than just boundaries between fields. Clever farmers planted their most delicate crops along south-facing stone walls for good reason. During the day, sunlight would warm these stone structures. As temperatures dropped at night, the stones slowly released this stored heat, creating a microclimate several degrees warmer than the surrounding area. These medieval walls didn't just keep out wild animals, they doubled as free heating systems when the sun went down. In particularly cold regions, some communities built curved stone walls that focused this heat effect even more, creating pockets where frost-sensitive plants could survive. Field placement was carefully planned based on the sun's path. South-facing slopes received up to 40% more sunlight than flat ground in northern regions. This extra solar energy meant warmer soil and better growing conditions. Medieval farmers would reserve these prime growing spots for their most important or vulnerable crops. Written records from monastery gardens show that herbs planted on south-facing slopes matured up to 2 weeks earlier than those in less favorable positions. Perhaps the most creative use of natural heat came from the strategic placement of gardens near livestock pens. The body heat from animals actually warmed the surrounding air enough to make a difference for nearby plants. Medieval farmers knew their animals were good for more than just milk and meat. They were walking furnaces that kept the vegetables cozy too. A large barn with 20 cows could raise the air temperature in adjacent areas by as much as 4 degrees on cold nights. This small difference could save an entire crop from a killing frost. Some innovative communities even built living quarters and animal shelters on the north side of garden plots, creating a windbreak while also allowing heat from daily activities to benefit their food production. Smoke vents from cooking fires were sometimes directed to flow under raised growing beds before exiting, providing valuable warmth to plant roots. With their growing areas warmed by both artificial and natural heat sources, medieval farmers faced their next challenge. Medieval farmers needed to preserve seeds and plant materials to start growing again when winter ended. Their storage methods worked surprisingly well without any modern technology. Seeds were a farmer's most valuable possession. Without them, next year's crops wouldn't exist. Drying seeds properly came first. After harvest, farmers spread seeds on cloth in warm, sunny places until completely dry. They knew moisture would cause seeds to rot or sprout too early. These medieval farmers knew the rules for seed storage before any gardening book was written. Keep them dry, dark, and tell them bedtime stories about becoming mighty oaks. Once dried, seeds went into clay pots. These containers kept out mice and insects while allowing just enough air to prevent mold. Clay pots can maintain steady humidity levels that keep seeds alive for years. Some villages added herbs like tansy to their seed storage to drive away bugs. Many seeds stayed best in cool temperatures just above freezing. Underground cellars or rooms dug into hillsides provided these conditions naturally. Some medieval seed storage rooms kept temperature changes within 5 degrees all year. Quite impressive without modern thermostats. Root vegetables for replanting needed different care. Carrots, turnips, and other roots were packed in slightly damp sand inside wooden barrels or stone-lined pits dug below the frost line. This method stopped them from drying out while preventing rot. These root vegetables basically went into cold sleep for the winter, like bears hibernating, but with more plans to be dinner later. Traditional root storage pits typically stayed between 33 and 40 degrees, perfect for keeping living plant tissue alive through winter. Small herbs often received special treatment. Many were potted and brought inside homes or monasteries where they could survive until spring. These living plants provided fresh seasonings during winter while ensuring new plants for the next growing season. While their carefully stored seeds and plants waited for warmer days, medieval farmers discovered that there was something that wasn't always their enemies. Winter cold might seem like an enemy to growing food, but medieval farmers found surprising ways to make snow and ice work for them. These creative methods turned winter problems into farming solutions. Snow acted as a natural blanket for many planted fields. A thick layer of snow actually protected dormant plants from the much colder air above it. During the worst cold snaps, temperatures under snow can be up to 30 degrees warmer than the exposed air. Medieval farmers knew snow was nature's electric blanket long before electricity was invented. Just plug in a snowstorm and watch your crops stay cozy. Winter wheat and rye particularly benefited from this snow protection. Fields that stayed snow-covered throughout winter often grew 20% more grain than fields where plants were exposed to freezing air. Clever water management using ice became another useful strategy. Farmers sometimes made shallow pools in autumn that would freeze during winter. As these ice sheets slowly melted in early spring, they provided steady water to nearby fields exactly when young plants needed it most. These medieval farmers were basically running the world's slowest irrigation system, frozen in winter but ready to deliver when spring hit the defrost button. This technique helped in areas that often faced dry periods in spring. Old farming records mention special ice fields that supplied water for up to 3 weeks during the important early growing season. The freezing and thawing cycle also helped improve difficult soil. Heavy clay soils that were almost impossible to work when wet became easier to manage after winter freezes broke them apart. Smart farmers would plow these soils in autumn and leave the rough furrows exposed to winter weather. The repeated freezing and thawing naturally broke the big clumps into smaller pieces, creating better soil for planting without extra work. Winter frost was the medieval version of a soil blender, breaking up chunks without requiring a single calorie of human effort. This technique can reduce spring planting work by as much as 40%. Winter barley fields made direct use of snowmelt. Seeds were sometimes planted just before the first expected snowfall. They stayed dormant but perfectly positioned to grow the moment temperatures rose and snow melted. The moisture from melting snow helped seeds sprout quickly and gave young plants protection against spring dry spells. Fields planted this way often sprouted 7 to 10 days earlier than those planted after all the snow had melted. With winter's cold now helping rather than hurting their farming efforts, medieval farmers turned their attention to another critical challenge. After growing their crops successfully, medieval farmers needed perfect timing for harvest. Picking at the right moment meant full storehouses instead of empty bellies during winter. Staggered harvesting became their winning strategy. Instead of gathering everything at once, farmers picked crops in carefully planned stages. Their harvest schedule was more detailed than a royal court's dancing lessons, though with much more practical results. Early harvests began with quick-growing vegetables while tougher crops stayed in the ground longer. Many villages created 5 or 6 different harvest zones, each picked at specific times based on generations of weather observations. Late-season root crops got special treatment. Vegetables like turnips and parsnips stayed in the ground until just before hard frost. These patient root vegetables were the procrastinators of the medieval garden, always waiting until the absolute last minute. The cool soil actually improved their flavor and storage life. Root vegetables harvested right before the first hard freeze can last up to 30% longer in storage than those dug up earlier, providing fresh food well into winter. Medieval farmers also turned frost into a flavor enhancer. Some crops, like kale and certain cabbages, taste sweeter after experiencing light frost. The cold causes these plants to convert starches into sugars, improving both taste and nutrition. Frost was basically nature's sugar sprinkle, turning bitter greens into medieval dessert. Monastery records suggest that kale harvested after 3 frosts contained up to 40% more vitamin C than summer harvested greens. Timing these harvests required impressive weather knowledge. Communities developed prediction methods based on natural signs. Cloud patterns, animal behavior, and even onion skin thickness helped determine when killing frost would arrive. These folk methods correctly predicted first frost dates within 5 days over 70% of the time. With their harvests safely gathered before winter's grip tightened, medieval farmers still needed one more trick. Growing anything during freezing winter months seems impossible, yet medieval farmers managed to produce fresh greens even when snow covered the ground. Fresh vegetables provided crucial nutrition during winter months when most people relied on stored foods. Indoor herb gardens flourished in unexpected places. Monasteries led the way in winter growing, using their stone buildings to create protected growing spaces. Many monastery kitchens maintained small herb gardens in south-facing windows where plants like thyme, parsley, and chives could grow year-round. These monks were the original indoor plant parents, keeping their leafy babies alive long before Instagram made it trendy. The steady indoor temperatures and consistent care resulted in surprisingly productive growing spaces. Records from one German monastery show they harvested fresh herbs at least twice weekly throughout winter, providing vital vitamin C when scurvy threatened many communities. Heated compost gardens created warm growing spaces outdoors. Fresh manure and plant waste generate significant heat as they decompose, sometimes reaching temperatures above 100 degrees in the center of large piles. Clever medieval gardeners placed cold-tolerant greens like young kale and certain herbs near these decomposing heaps. These steaming piles of waste were medieval hot tubs for plants, without the awkward human conversations. The extra warmth allowed plants to grow slowly, even during cold periods. The area within 3 feet of a large compost heap can remain up to 20 degrees warmer than surrounding garden spaces, creating a perfect microclimate for winter greens. Sprouted grains provided another source of fresh winter greens. When other growing methods failed, people would sprout wheat, barley, and rye indoors. These sprouted grains could be grown in any container with minimal light and offered considerable nutritional benefits. Medieval sprouting was basically salad farming for lazy people. No weeding, no waiting months, just add water and wait. Sprouted grains contain up to 40% more nutrients than unsprouted grains and can be ready to eat in just 5 to 7 days. This quick-growing food source helped bridge the gap when other fresh foods became unavailable during the harshest winter weeks. Some communities built special growing chambers partially underground where the Earth's natural warmth provided some protection from freezing temperatures. South-facing rock walls absorbed sunlight during the day and released heat at night, creating a mini greenhouse effect. With these creative methods for producing winter greens established, medieval farmers still needed one more skill to survive year after year. Medieval farmers faced the challenge of keeping soil healthy through freezing winters without modern tools. Their clever soil methods made the difference between feast and famine when spring finally arrived. Rotating fields was their main strategy for keeping soil strong. They split their farmland into 3 big fields and used each one differently each year. In the first field, they planted winter grains. In the second, they grew spring crops. The third field they left empty on purpose. This was called fallow land. This empty field wasn't wasted space. The soil in this field got a full year to rest and rebuild its strength. Studies of old farm records show this simple rotation boosted food production by about 1/3 compared to constantly used fields. Adding natural fertilizers kept their soil rich even in cold weather. Wood ash from cooking fires contained minerals that plants needed. Instead of tossing it out, farmers collected this ash and spread it on their fields. Crushed animal bones mixed into soil added important nutrients that helped plants grow stronger roots, exactly what crops needed to survive the harsh winter. A farmer might joke that feeding bones to the soil was like feeding the earth itself breakfast. Cover crops protected bare soil after harvest. As soon as one crop came out, medieval farmers quickly planted fast-growing plants like clover. These plants had amazing powers. They could take nitrogen from the air and store it in little bumps on their roots. When farmers dug these plants into the soil in spring, all that nitrogen became food for new crops. Plus, these cover plants kept precious topsoil from washing away during winter storms and spring thaws. Marling was a special technique used in many cold regions. Farmers dug up chalky clay from deep underground and spread it on their fields. This clay helped balance out sour soil. The practice was so valuable that the right to dig marl was written into many farm agreements. It was backbreaking work that had farmers joking they were feeding rocks to dirt and hoping for bread in return. Sheep and cows became four-legged fertilizer spreaders and clever farm systems. After harvest, farmers let animals graze on leftover plants and fields. The animals got food, and the soil got fresh manure exactly where it was needed. Farmers built movable fences to make sure their animals spread the fertilizer evenly. As one old farming saying went, "A sheep's foot is golden for the field it walks on." Green manuring was practiced when farmers intentionally grew a crop just to plow it under. Plants like mustard would be grown until they flowered, then turned into the soil while still green. As these plants decomposed, they released nutrients and added organic matter to the soil. This technique was especially valuable for remote fields where hauling manure was difficult. Winter soil care also included digging trenches to help water drain away. Too much water sitting in fields would freeze solid, killing plant roots and making the ground impossible to work in early spring. Fields with good drainage could be planted weeks earlier than poorly drained ones, extending the growing season in places where every day counted. Snow actually helped protect soil life. Under that white blanket, tiny helpful creatures could survive to keep soil healthy for spring. Many farmers watched for snow fleas, tiny jumping insects that appeared on sunny winter days, as a sign that their soil was alive and well. When the last frost melted away, these well-cared-for fields were ready for seeds, ending the cycle of winter protection and beginning the hopeful work of spring planting.